So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another instalment of the Other One show. This round's theme is entitled Better Commissioning for Better Lives. My name is Neil Hudson-Basing. I'm the Corporate Events Manager for London South Bank University. Great to see so many people joining us this afternoon. And before we start, I'm just going to take you through some virtual housekeeping, starting with a short statement on respect and dignity. So everyone attending or speaking at an LSBU event, whether in person or virtually, should be treated with respect, dignity and courtesy. LSBU operates in an environment built on equality, inclusion and acceptance. We value contributions, feedback and comments and wish to create a space for learning, sharing, celebrating and bringing communities together. LSBU does not tolerate any form of bullying, abuse, harassment or discrimination. Inappropriate behaviour will be treated seriously and acted upon, and anyone exhibiting any such behaviour will also be removed from the webinar. We want our events to be an enjoyable, safe and warm experience for all. Thank you for adhering to these guidelines, and I'm sure none of those awful things will be a problem today. So just to take you through the Zoom and the functionality, we're in Zoom Pro, which means that you can turn your cameras on and unmute yourselves at any time. I'd just like to ask you to keep muted while Sonia is doing her wonderful job of hosting and interviewing our special guests today, and we've got some great guests lined up for you. If you could just keep those on mute, that would be great. And then when it's time for audience Q&A, we'll let you know, and you can ask a live question. You can do so by raising your hand under the reactions tab, which is just at the bottom of the screen, or you can turn your camera on and unmute yourself and just let us know that you'd like to ask a question. Please feel free to use the chat box throughout the event to share your thoughts and comments. Far from detracting from the event, it helps to bring it to life and get some conversation going. As I've already reminded you, we will be recording this session. If you don't wish to feature in the recording, please keep your cameras and microphone off. That would be great. And use the chat box if you prefer. I have enabled subtitles for those that need them. You can hide them if you want to by clicking the little up arrow next to CC live transcript and clicking on hide subtitles, but we do enable those in the interest of inclusivity and accessibility. That's all from me. I think I'm going to hand over to Sonia. Have a great afternoon. I'm available in the background if you have any questions. Sonia, over to you.
Yep, thank you. Hello and welcome to the Other Show. I'm Sonia Reed. We have a packed show for you today, featuring some great guests. In today's show, we will be talking to better lives and what commissioners should be doing to make things more equal for people with learning disabilities. So we found out more about what commissioners is. What's the difference it can make you and how things need to change. We will also be talking about how we can all have a voice so we can plan changes together based on what's important to us. We will hear from Christina Burke, Director of Foundation with People with Learning Disabilities, Steve Harley, Practice Development Nurse, and from Ismail, Peter and Anne, who will talk to us about the recent event of commissioners. We will leave a little bit time for audience questions at the end of each interview. So if you have any questions, please write them in the text box. We will try to ask as many as time will allow. Our first guests are here to talk about better commissioning for better lives. We all want equality and we all want good lives. Commissioners in health and social care make plans and decisions about local services so they can have a big impact on our lives. We have a roundtable event about this in March, and I'm delighted that Ismail, Peter and Anne Lloyd will be in the commissioners trying to work for better life for many years is going to be present. This part of the show will our fellow guest Ismail Peter, and over to you, Anne.
Sonia, thank you so much. It's great to be here to be talking about commissioning with my colleagues today. And so, Sonia, I know you said a little bit about it, but commissioning, it doesn't always sound like the most exciting thing in the world, does it? But it really is important. So Peter, Ishmael and I are here to tell you more about why we think commissioning really is something to shout about. First of all, let me introduce you to Peter and to Ishmael. Ishmael Karji is Parliamentary Support Officer for MENCAP. Ishmael, welcome.
Hello.
Thanks, Ishmael. And Peter is chair of the advisory group at the Foundation for People with Learning Disabilities. Peter, I know you've been on the Other One show before, so I'm delighted to welcome you back. Hello, Peter.
Hi.
Great. So as Sonia said, we held a roundtable event in March this year, and the event was all about better commissioning for better lives. So same theme as today. And it came about because people with learning disabilities, a lot of them from the advisory group, said that they wanted to meet with commissioners to understand more about the role, but also about how things can be better and more equal for people with learning disabilities and people with autism, and how together we can make that happen more of the time. So Ishmael and Peter were the co-chairs of the event, along with Mark Harper MP, who chairs the all-party parliamentary group on learning disability. But first of all, let's just have a recap. What is commissioning? Ishmael?
Okay, thank you. And so commissioning is about planning services and making good use of money. It should be about making decisions that will help people get better lives. The commissioners at the roundtable work for the health services or for local authorities, people who can really make a difference.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ishmael. That helps make everything clearer. So it was the Foundation for People with Learning Disabilities, the advisory group, MENCAP, and the NHS Confederation that planned the roundtable event. And one of the main triggers for us in doing that as well was we know that there have been decades upon decades of really well-intentioned policies. People have had really good ideas. But despite those years and years of good policies and legislation, we still know that things are really, really unequal for people with learning disabilities. Their chances are poorer across lots of different areas of life. And that's not explained or accounted for by people's specific health conditions, for example. And Ishmael, at the roundtable event, you talked about that and presented some statistics. What were some of the inequalities that struck you?
So almost 3 in 4 people with learning disabilities or living with autism have experienced hate crime. People on average die a lot younger. 40% of adults with a learning disability have a mental health problems. That double the general population. People with a learning disability are 6 times more likely to die of COVID-19, 30 times more likely for people aged 18 to 34 years old. Only 6% of adults with a learning disabilities known to local authorities are in paid work. People are twice as likely to be lonely, and lots of these issues are interlinked and are often much worse for people from Black, Asian, minority ethnic backgrounds.
And Ishmael, what has been your own experience of some of those inequalities?
So my own experience about employment. It was a very challenging time. I was about around age 19 at that time, and I've done a couple of courses in college and lots of things that I need to do to gain my CV. But I I went into on 50 interviews where I did 50 applications with support through the job center and the advisor who specialize to help people with learning disabilities to apply. But even though the interviews did not went too well, because I done everything that was to be done, but it didn't seem the organizations seem to understood what skills I can bring into the job. So until those 50 interviews, then I end up where MenCap they had an employment service supported me around getting into work. And the difference was me getting to work in MenCap was that I didn't actually got an interview. It might be sort of an interview, but it was a very different way of doing it. It's more me showing my abilities, what I can do into the job, instead of me explaining or sharing my CV and all my stuff. So in a way, if people want to look for work, you don't need to hand out paperwork. You need to hand out your own self and show them what you can actually do.
Yeah. Brilliant. Thanks, Ishmael. That sounds like a better way for everyone, doesn't it? But
yeah,
just those figures that you talked us through there, I mean, they're scary, aren't they? That some of those figures are just exceptionally stark. But as we said, those inequalities, they're not inevitable. They needn't happen. There is something we can do about them, and we should be doing all we can to really challenge them. And that was a big part of the roundtable event. And so we were thinking as well. I mean, Mark Harper MP at the event, he talked through some of the policies that we've seen over the years, and I won't list them all, but just thinking about valuing people now, Winterbourne View, the reports that came from that, transforming care, not least equality legislation as well. So we've got lots of plans, we spend lots of money, but it doesn't always make the difference that it should in bringing about better and more equal lives. Peter, at the event, you made like really, really important point that to change things, we need to know what's important to people. But Peter, where do we start?
Well, for one, we can start by asking people, but we need to remember what people have already told us. They have been telling us for years. What does everybody want? Rights, inclusion, and equality. It's individual to everyone. But we know that most people want ordinary lives, the things that matter to most people. Things like love, a girlfriend or boyfriend, the right to get married, being close to my family and friends, a paid job, money to buy things I like, being part of my community, a home of my own, support for my health needs, and learning skills so I can be independent.
Brilliant. Thanks, Peter. And it doesn't sound like that much to ask, does it? You know, that as you say, they are things that are important to most people. So at the round table, people were really open and honest, and we had some discussion groups and people with learning disabilities at the event, and commissioners came up with their own personal commitment to change. And in that, we were talking about what's stopping us, trying to think what we can personally do different, and also how we can bring about better change together. There were loads and loads of ideas, and when we wrote them all down, it's a massive, big, long list. So what we've done is turn those into some top tips for commissioners, and Ishmael and Peter are going to tell us about a few of those. So Ishmael.
Yeah, thanks, Anne. So challenging discrimination. Commissioners need to be champions for equality, diversity, and individual needs and identities. Make reasonable adjustments. We want to use mainstream services, but some mainstream services don't work well for people with learning disabilities. We need to call them out and help them be better. We need reasonable adjustments, make sure there's training and awareness and easy read information.
So call them out, but help show the way as well. Really important. Peter?
Yeah, like I said, find out what's important to people, but we must assume basic rights. So we don't keep asking the obvious. Also, co-production. There should be nothing about us. Sorry, there should be nothing about us without us. We get better results when we co-produce. Ask people how they want to be involved. Learn from elsewhere. Include people from different backgrounds. Don't forget about people's individual plans too.
Good point. So if we're thinking about commissioning, we need to think about the individual as well as the big strategic plans. And Ishmael?
So be brave, be prepared to take risks. It's even riskier if people don't have rights. Help staff to help people to live the lives they want.
Brilliant, thank you. Peter?
And also empower people with information and with time. People need to know what they can expect from services. Please ensure workers have time for proper conversation to connect on a human level. We start young so we can help people and their families in childhood to get the skills so they can remain empowered and supported to live in an ordinary life in a community. As one person said, it's exhausting jumping through hoops to get support.
Yeah, what a powerful statement. And we should all be removing those hoops as well as you said, helping people develop those skills for life, including that confidence, you know, and that right to be listened to. And I think we've got a couple more top tips. So Ishmael?
So develop a shared vision and expectations. Does support focus on what matters to the person? Will it improve their life? Make sure senior managers support these plans and make it part of the equalities agenda.
And Peter?
And more action. Get better at making change happen. We can do. Start your own local conversation about commissioning for better lives and start making the right change happen.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ishmael and Peter. Really, really important points and a real call to action and a real encouragement for people to have those conversations locally. And we know lots of people already have, but you know, we're happy to share any of the questions that we talked about at the event as well, if that helps get things going locally in each other's areas. So Neil, have we got any questions from the audience?
There's none in the chat box, but if you have a question, please do feel free to pop your camera and mic on to ask them. We'd love to hear from you.
Now, we've got some 5 quick questions for Anne, Peter and Ismail. The first one, where did you go on your last holiday?
Sonia, I went to Devon.
Peter?
Well, the last holiday I went to I think it was France. That was back in 1985.
Thanks. Ismail?
Me, I haven't been on holiday for a while. I've been just focusing, budgeting my money. Just bought a house in 2018. So I'm working hard on paying most of the stuff that's important.
Thank you. Your next quick question. Savoury breakfast like sausages or vegetarian sausages or a plain chocolate dessert?
Sonia, can I have both, or is that not allowed?
Yeah.
I'll go for sausages if I have to. Thank you.
Peter,
Yeah, same here. I love sausages.
Ismail?
What was the question? Sorry.
It's savoury breakfast, sausage or vegetarian sausage, or a plain chocolate. It's a dessert, isn't it made of chocolate?
Neither of them. Sorry.
Your first question, a criminal mastermind is holding your car to ransom. He said that if you don't do what he says, he will crash your car. Your insurance does not cover this. He wants you to dress like Robin Hood everywhere you go, include a bow for 6 months. Working family events, popping into a pub, everything you cannot tell anyone. You must defend your outfit. When questioned, you saying that you think you look super cool. What would you do? Do you dress as Robin Hood, or do you have your car crashed?
Yeah. There's my car keys. Take it. Crush it.
Peter?
I think I'll probably do the same thing.
Ismail?
Same.
I can't blame you. Your next quick fire question. If you could get a performer or a band to perform a gig in your living room, who would it be?
Oh, Saint Etienne. I think they'd go very nicely in my living room.
Ismail?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I prefer peace and quiet. That's what I prefer.
Yeah, I can't blame you. Peter?
Oh, sorry, can you repeat the question to catch it?
It's if you have a performer or a band to perform in your living room, what would it be? Who would it be?
Oh, a performer. Oh, I guess Phil Collins or Phil Collins, either that or play a classical piece.
Yeah, this is the last quick fire question. You can choose a superpower with a twist. Which would you choose? You could fly, but you get a hair stick, or you can turn invisible, but you can't control when it happens.
Yeah, fly.
Peter?
Yeah, same here. For flying.
Ismail?
I'll probably make my own superpowers. I won't go neither of them.
So, is there any questions?
I think Ismail, you said that you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I do, Shiv, that's all right. So as me and then Peter said quite a lot of it. And if you describe a jigsaw, yeah, for example, one piece of jigsaw doesn't fix a jigsaw, does it? Yeah. So we're in this meeting, and if we work all together, we can make things happen. So we're a piece of jigsaw. Myself, the piece of jigsaw, and lots of other people in a meeting. If we put that together, it can make a good way to help people with disabilities, learning disabilities, and everybody else, like put in like accessible information, accessible communication, including people with disabilities in many ways. You can, because if you don't include people with disabilities or learning disabilities, then things can get a lot wrong, a lot messier, and also time, it can be quite wasting time consuming. So if we work together in first start, things can go quite smoothly as long as we have the right tools and working together. That's most important, working together. And I think we're getting there, but we still got a lot to put in together. So yeah, that's me.
So Sonia, can I just thank, well, yourself, Peter and Ishmael, and the point that was made earlier that, you know, if we're not doing our work and commissioning for better lives, but what are we doing it for? It makes you scratch your head. So thank you to you and all the people around, everyone on the chat, but, you know, people with learning disabilities and autism who are fighting to make the world a better place, not just for themselves, but for everyone. So Sonia, thanks for time on the show today, and back to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Anne, Ismail and Peter. And now it's a second guest. It's time for a second feature. The next guest is Steve Harley. Steve is a practice development nurse and independent nurse consultant. Steve has 30 years experience in working with people with learning disabilities. He works in a variety of settings, including supporting living, inpatient services, and education. He is currently a practice development nurse for Oxley's NHS Foundation Trust and associate editor of Avenues and in Autism. Steve also acts as an independent consultant, specialised in supporting people with learning disabilities to have a platform to be heard. In 2020, he helped to edit a book, Peter and Friends, about the experience of people with learning disabilities during the pandemic. So, pandemic for people with learning disabilities. So, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome Steve Harley.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here.
Steve, can you tell us about a little bit about your work and what it involves?
Well, I wear many, many hats. So when I'm a practice development nurse, I support other nurses to develop their practice. So training nurses, etc. But also I'm hired sort of 1 day a week to take people with, no, not all people with, autistic individuals out who find it very, very difficult, distressing time. So they're an inpatient user at the moment. But that's really beneficial for me and also for the person. I've been to loads of places with the autistic individuals like Comic Con, London Zoo, all the other zoos in the southeast, theatres, etc. That's really good. Also, as an independent nurse consultant, I do so much with Lloyd Page, who works for MenCap, and Peter Cronin, he works for Lucian Speaking Up. So we're supporting other people to speak up and be heard. yeah, and it's not only a job for me, it's a passion and how I live my life. Yeah, I really enjoy supporting people with learning disabilities.
You was involved in editing the book, Peter and Friends. Can you tell us about that and how it comes about?
Yes, in April 2020, as everybody remembers, the pandemic suddenly hit us all, and it was brand new to everybody. But for people with learning disabilities, it was a very, very difficult time, especially for Peter Cronin, who lives by himself but has outreach support. But the outreach suddenly had to stop for a couple of weeks because they weren't allowed contact with him. Plus, he doesn't read all right. So he tried to telephone the GP, but he couldn't understand all the information they were giving him. Then he got a cough and he thought, oh my God, I got COVID. So he called me up and I went over to meet him in Hither Green, London, at the end of April. And he said, well, how do other people with learning disabilities experience COVID? And I said, oh, I don't know. He's got loads of experience of publishing, so have I. So he suggested, why don't we write a book about it? So we sent out loads of invites to everybody all over the world through social media such as Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, via emails, and also sending letters to advocacy groups in the UK. And we got such a brilliant, absolutely enormous response from people suggesting their stories and what they want to include in the book, etc. Yeah, so that's how it came about.
Thinking about people said in Peter and Friends, but also from your wider experience, what have people told you about their experiences of using services?
It's my logo and also Peters and Lloyd's. It's Speak Up and Be Heard. Both of them and everyone else I've spoken to, they say, well, I've had loads of experience of not being listened to, not being heard, and people making decisions on my behalf, even though they can make their own decisions. That's a really difficult situation. So, you know, if someone decided on my behalf that, you know, I can't go to work tomorrow, I'm going to have chicken instead of veggie, a meal, I get really angry. And I can't believe that sometimes people's lives are dictated by other people. And so that's why we really, we wrote Peter and Friends, but also why we get involved with the advocacy groups. Yeah, and also, you know, I work with people with learning disabilities who have mental health problems. So lots of these people are sectioned in inpatient units, a minute number of the wider population, and they get to stay in hospitals for a long, long time. And this is because of poor commissioning. You know, they haven't got the local experience of community services for people with learning disabilities and mental health problems. So we're fighting every day to get the social workers to come out and meet the individuals and go and take them to places, the options they have, etc. Yeah, but it's really to speak up and be heard.
Yeah. What are some of the things that people said is important to them in their lives?
What came across in the whole book was be informed. So I know it's really difficult for anybody, whether you're older, younger, what ethnic group you come from, or male or woman. But people with learning disabilities add that extra bit to it. And sometimes, you know, the information was coming out about COVID on a daily basis. So it was hard to catch up. And then as soon as we wrote an easy read version of it, well, then the evidence has changed. So I think we need to think about better ways of communicating with people with learning disabilities. So like multi-platforms, so not only easy read, but like very, very short YouTube videos. I met a lady with a learning disability called Fatma, who works for Share Community in Tooting, and she actually makes brilliant 2-minute video clips and really, really great. Also audio tapes, CDs. Yeah, so we need to explore every avenue of communication, because information is so important for me and for you and for everybody else.
Yeah. What do you think is getting in the way of people achievement? These things, those things.
Well, I think it's improving. It's getting much better, especially with work by MenCap and the Foundation for People with Learning Disabilities. Yeah, but it's some individuals, minority of individuals, plus individuals in the government who really don't understand what a learning disability is, and also what it feels like for someone to have a learning disability and never to be heard. Yeah, I think that sets a wall against their achievements. Yeah, I think of the lack of education of the public, also being in the poverty bracket of people with learning disabilities, and many other people. But you know, especially with the new expenses coming in our way, so fuel bills, etc., food bills, etc. So all these increase, but then our benefits don't increase at the same level. So that's really difficult. Yeah, I could go on, but yeah, it's not being heard is the exact point.
As we heard earlier, hopes and dreams are really important. What were people's hopes in the future? Anything that practically struck you?
Yes. Most of these are COVID based, but we spoke to a young man called Michael. He lives in South Africa, just a small village about an hour away from Cape Town. And he got a job just before COVID started as a cleaner at a local hospital for people with learning disabilities, because they still have hospitals for people with learning disabilities in South Africa. He was there for 2 weeks, and then COVID started, so he wasn't allowed in because he was counted as a vulnerable individual. But he had really high aspirations. He wanted to become a support worker for other people with learning disabilities. But thankfully now 2.5 years on, he's actually on his way to becoming a support worker. He's doing a health and social work kind of qualification. I don't know what you call it in South Africa, but he's doing that at the moment. So that's really, really good. A man called Greg, who works in England, his aspirations were actually to get back to work, because like everyone else, he couldn't go to work, and his job is traveling all over the country, teaching people about sight and visual impairments. So he really hoped that he will achieve this. Also Peter himself and his girlfriend Sandra, they're really hoping that they live in 2 flats opposite each other, but they applied for a single flat for both of them to live in, so they're hoping that they will get somewhere to live in pretty soon, but they've been waiting 4 years for it. And yeah, well, I said I can support him with it, speak up with him, but he hasn't decided yet whether he wants to rock the boat with the social services. Yeah, so people have really different aspirations.
Were there any recommendations about what needs to change to make things better?
Yes, exactly. The lady called Fatma, who was, if we had a presidency here, I would vote for her to be president of the UK because she had some brilliant ideas. She said to me when I interviewed her about simulation. So, you know, for example, we do simulation in universities, colleges for students, student nurses, student doctors, etc. So we pretend I'm going to take your blood pressure, etc. But she said, well, we have wider simulations, so national simulations. So she remembered that the government announced immediately one day, we're going to shut down Aldgate tube station and pretend that someone's blown up a bomb there, and all the ambulance, the fire, the police, etc., all need to, you know, concentrate on that incident because a major incident happened and there were absolutely hundreds of people involved. But she said there wasn't one person with a learning disability. I can't quote whether this is correct or not, but I believe her. There wasn't one person with a learning disability who was acting as a member of the public, because all the members of the public were actors. So she said that, well, out of every 100, there's at least one person with a mild learning disability and so one person with a severe learning disability. So she said that, well, I can understand why people with severe learning disabilities may not be able to act and understand what's happening. But she said, them 2 people out of the 100 should be people with learning disabilities or mild learning disabilities. And why doesn't this happen? So that was one recommendation. Another recommendation was clear information for everybody. Lloyd, he doesn't mind me saying this, but when he caught COVID, he was taken into Lewisham A&E. So when he went into A&E, they said, I'm afraid you've got COVID-19. Okay, so he waited for the porters to come down and take him up to the ward. So when he got to the ward, they said, oh, I'm afraid you've got coronavirus. He started to panic because I've got 2 diseases. You know, what's the difference? So we need to pick one term to make the information clear and consistency. Yeah, and also basically that people who live by themselves or live with families, etc., need this support. They need a voice. So they recommended that if any pandemic happened like this again, that local authorities should have someone with a learning disability representing the population on their board or panel. Also NHS trusts, also local government, and actually in government as well, which hopefully we're starting with the All Parliament group. Yeah.
We were talking about commissioning and planning today. What would be your main message to commissioners?
Well, I used to be a consultant. We was employed by some commissioners, but also other private organisations. And one of the main points I've learned as being a consultant, I'm not one now, was that you need to ask who's commissioning you what they want to achieve at the end. Because hopefully I'm not going to upset everybody, but you know, if you're going to get a consultancy firm in, you're paying them to consult with everybody, but also to come up with what you envisage as the outcome at the end of the day. So I imagine that as a consultancy firm and commissioners who get us in, they will actually have to give us more time to consult with individuals. So for example, if I got a consultancy firm in and just gave them, oh, we've got 2 weeks to consult with the members of the public. Well, 2 weeks, members of the public, they've already made up their mind what they're going to do. So that's not true consultancy. Yeah, so they need to give consultants real time and also go in with an open mind to talk to individuals with learning disabilities and the rest of the public.
Thank you. Now we're going to see if there's any questions for you, Steve.
Cool.
There's a couple of questions. I know we're running slightly over, so I'll fire them off very quickly. Steve asked, how is the commissioning poor in your experience? Is that at strategic or individual level?
It varies. Yeah, on an individual basis. But basically, it's not down to commissioning. It's also down to the all the wealth of community services for people with learning disabilities and mental health problems. So we see all these individuals getting sent out of borough, and plus in inner city areas, it's so much more expensive to buy a house or to set up a service for people with learning disabilities and with mental health problems to move into. So we can see the reasons why they're sending people out of borough, but we're saying this is your choice, it's up to you, but then we shouldn't offer them choices if we're going to make the decision on their behalf. So I feel sorry for commissioners, they got their hands tied, but also, you know, we need to make sure choice is a real choice.
Thank you. And then just the next one, and we'll just have to answer this quickly if that's okay. James says, I've met commissioners who had no experience of the people they're working with. What do people think of the general term supported living? So audience, feel free to answer that question in the chat box. But Steve, what do you make of that?
Well, I had this question asked me last week, and it was on a capacity assessment. And I was going to say to this lady, do you want to be in residential care or supported living? And well, I questioned how they're going to ask her that individual question, because it's not up to her whether she needs residential care or supported living. It's down to social services or the NHS. Supported living, I think it's a really great idea, and hopefully it's going well. Yeah, but residential care, I reckon that gives you a particular amount of expertise from the staff, etc., if you actually need it. So it depends on whether the individual needs the support and help at that level.
Thanks, Steve. That's all for the questions. Sonia, back over to you.
Right. Now we're going to do your 5 quick questions.
Go for it.
Where did you go for your last holiday?
Dorset on the Jurassic coast.
If you have a savoury breakfast, would it be sausage, vegetarian sausage, or a plain chocolate?
Veggie sausages, definitely.
Your third one, if a criminal mastermind is holding your car to ransom, he said that if you don't do what he says, he will crash your car. Your insurance doesn't cover this. He wants you to dress up as Robin Hood everywhere you go, including a bow for 6 months. To work, family events, popping into a pub, everywhere you can't tell anyone, you must defend your outfit. When questioned by saying that you think you look super cool, what do? Do you dress as Robin Hood or does your car get crushed?
Well, I had a stroke about 6 years ago, so I haven't been able to drive ever since. So I don't own a car, so I'd have to dress up as Robin Hood.
Next question, if you could get any performer or band perform a gig in your living room, who would it be?
Oh, I've got 3 choices, if I can have 3 choices. Madonna, Shawn Mendes, or Billy Bragg.
If you could choose one superpower with a twist, which you choose, you could fly, but there's a air stick, or you can turn invisible, but you cannot tell when it happens.
I'd like to be invisible because I like the look on people's faces when I suddenly appear from nowhere.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Steve Harley.
Thank you.
Now we're on the 3rd guest, and it's Christopher Burke. We now like to introduce you to a woman who has worked for decades to achieve a better and fairer world for us all. As director of the Foundation with People with Learning Disabilities, she has raised the issues of equality and generation and ensure that people have their own voice. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome Christopher Burke. Hello, Christopher, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Sonia. What an introduction. And yes, I am old. I'm nearing retirement. That's why I've worked for so many years. So thank you very much.
Christopher, please tell us about your job.
I work for the Foundation for People with Learning Disabilities, and I work with people with learning disabilities directly, families and staff, to look at inequalities in life. And we support everything we do is to support better lives for people with learning disabilities. And we do this by doing research, and we do research so we have the evidence, so we can show people what it is, why it is we're saying something. Training people with learning disabilities to be able to train staff about different aspects of their work. We do projects like showing what good looks like in different areas of work. And for example, we have our Pass It On project, which is a peer mentoring program in mental health, where we train people with learning disabilities to be peer mentors and mental health trainers. And they support peer mentoring groups, which Sonia is one of them. And they run peer mentoring groups with other people with learning disabilities so that they can start to make decisions about their own well-being. I'm trying to think what else we do. Basically, we're passionate about equality, and everything we do is with people with learning disabilities directly. We don't make decisions on our own. And it's important for us to remember whatever we do that our belief is led by this passion for inclusion and equality, and that learning disability is not an illness, it is a personal characteristic. And it's those personal characteristics that may get in the way of us getting equal lives. So yeah, that's what we do at the foundation.
And we've done work for hate crime as well.
We did, and you were leading on that, Sonia. Thank you. And what we did with the hate crime work is we spoke to people with learning disability nationally, and we've reached thousands of people who sadly had all experienced some form of hate crime. And most of it was with people who were from people with a smile, people who did hate crime with a smile, because they wanted to have friendships. And because of this want to have a friend, because they were lonely, they found that it was easy to manipulate them to do crime. It was easy to steal their money or to make them do criminal activity or anything like that, because they did it with a smile and they pretended to be friends. We found 95% of those individuals to have to be lonely. And the sad thing about it is that when we asked people how many had been referred to victim support, so considering 95% said that they'd experienced some form of hate crime, none had been referred to victim support. Nobody got any mental health support for their experience. So that was a very sad thing. But yeah, thank you, Sonia, because the what followed that, it shows the way we work really at the foundation. I don't know if that's your next question, but I will say it anyway, is that the group decided that what we should do next is look at what works, because they were very clear. We need to know what works out there. We know that there's bad practice. What is it that is good practice? So we did that, and we've got a report on that. And we're now hoping to start some new work, again, at the advice or at the guidance of our advisory group, looking at training others, training community police, training others to make sure that they are able to support people well.
Yep. Why is it important to have an organisation like Foundation that focus on the lives of people with learning disabilities and autism?
Well, it's important to have an organization for as long as it's needed. Our main aim is to be not needed forever. I want to see us disappear in the future because we're not needed anymore. Or an organization that's led directly by people with learning disabilities for as long as they want to. But I don't see us as having a future that is forever. We only should be there for as long as people need us. We are an independent organization, that makes it, and part of LSBU helps us to become more independent in the sense that we can say things as they are. We work with a board of people with learning disabilities and autism and families, and we make sure that we do what people ask us to do. We support leadership. We provide training for leadership for people with learning disabilities so that they can know how to support others. Support to say what they want. For example, the One Show came out of the advisory group saying that they wanted to have some sort of way of telling people, well, the word was telling people off, so that they could say things as they saw them. So we have the One Show, which hopefully will become the mouthpiece where people with learning disabilities and our host Sonia Reed will be able to ask some tough questions to some people, to actually say, well, why are things the way they are now? Well, they shouldn't be like this. Or why do you pay this person to do this? Why are there still big housing providers? Why am I still asking for some money to do some things? Why am I still looking for a job and nobody helps me? So it's those important questions that help people make decisions. And the other reason is that we take leadership very seriously. Like Sonia says, she's a lead in our hate crime work and in our pass it on work, our mental health work. But Peter, who is the other host, the other speaker on this group, is quite good on inequalities, and he takes a lead at looking at inequalities and running sessions, talking about why is it that people were 6 times more likely to die due to COVID, and analyzing that question with others. And Pat, who I don't know if she's on this show, but she leads on the mental health needs of people with learning disabilities. And we've done, for example, training for mainstream mental health staff so that they can start to really understand, to take their role seriously, which is about supporting people, whoever is sitting in front of them, whoever is that person is, just make the reasonable adjustments so that you can be the best professional you can be. So that, I think that's why it's important to have FPLD, because we tackle both, we tackle things equally with people with learning disabilities.
So things have changed a bit. What do you think needs to change now to ensure people with learning disabilities and people with autism have better lives?
Things have been slow in changing. I remember when I first started working in this area that there was a lot of segregation, there was a lot of institutional care, there were a lot of institutions, people were still living in hospitals, and then Valuing People made great changes. They closed all the institutional care homes. They started, I supported Valuing People looking at ethnicity and race. I supported family support, and we saw lots of changes happen, but very slowly. What are the things that need to start changing now is that we need to really understand what an ordinary life is, and understand what living independently means. Just like Steve said, living independently, what does that mean? Supported housing as opposed to housing. How do people become citizens instead of being residents? If I'm living in a group home, is it my home? Did I choose who the people I'm living with are? Am I having the life I want to be having, or are decisions made for me? If I am from a Black and minority ethnic community, or I have a different culture or faith, am I being fed what I shouldn't be eating? Are they respecting my culture and my background, for example? Maybe I don't eat pork, maybe I don't eat meat, maybe I'm vegetarian. How is that supported? So there's lots of questions in terms of personal, individualized support systems, individual support, where people can start to be respected for who they are and supported to have the lives they want. It's not good enough really to be living in homes that are restricted. And we need to make sure mainstream, as I said before, is supported, to make sure that they take their responsibility seriously. If you ask any mainstream provider, psychologist or psychiatrist or social worker or health professional or nurse, you ask them all what their job is, or psychologist, what their job is, and what their training entailed, what it included was for them to be person-centered. So if they're trained to be person-centered, it doesn't matter who sits in the chair in front of them, because if they're going to make the reasonable adjustments they need to make, then they need to make those reasonable adjustments. So why should I, because I don't speak English, get an interpreter, but because I have a learning disability, not be allowed to have someone come with me to the meeting? Why am I not allowed an interpreter if I have a learning disability? Why am I not allowed extra time if I have a learning disability? For example, for IAP services, people get an hour and a half, they get longer sessions if they come from a learning, if they have needs in terms of reasonable adjustments or language. But the same should be for people with learning disabilities. I need shorter sessions. So don't just give me 6 sessions, give me 12 half-hour sessions. That would work better for me. So it's making those reasonable adjustments and making sure that we follow the Equality Act. It's so important. And for FPLD, nothing about us without us is so important. And we want to make sure that happens really seriously. So we have an advocacy organization that shadows us and tells us if we are really doing equality right, if we're pretending, because it's so easy to pretend. And I'd like to really, because this is about commissioning, I'd like to start to look at some good practice. And the good practice that I always tell everybody is Get a Life in Coventry. And I have no problem singing their praises because they're absolutely amazing. They're a housing provider by 2 women who happen to be nurses. They deinstitutionalized people who lived in institutions. and they lead good, ordinary lives. They have lives like everybody else. They have circles of support, they have person-centered plans. They lead ordinary, inclusive lifestyles. They don't live in group homes, and they care for their staff as well as the people that live with them. So it's time we sang the praises of those good practices, and we started to really learn from them. What does good look like? We know what good looks like. And in terms of the hope for the future, Sonia, is that we really start to think about how we change things. And we really start to think about some of the good practice. For example, we'll continue as the Foundation for People with Learning Disability to work with Learning Disability England, and we'll continue to work with the Challenging Behaviour Foundation, because they do magnificent work. They do really good work. And we need to make sure that otherwise, if we're not hopeful, then what's the point? I'll stop, otherwise I'll talk for England.
How would you, as director of FPLD, help to make good changes happen?
By leading by example, probably. Prove what good looks like I said before. Really selling and supporting good practice. And good practice that led with people with learning disabilities. Prove what works and create examples of good practice, I think, is a must. And the other one show is something that we feel we'll continue with. And we'll continue to work with Anne Lloyd, who has been a commissioner for many years and developed a lot of good practice, to support with some of our thinking and support us to bring things together to make sure that we are able to develop our work in a positive way, to look at what good looks like. I feel that there's a lot of things that we need to do, which is better. We need to work better with people with learning disabilities. We need to learn, and we need to start to address some of the issues that are not working so well, not only in other areas, but in our work. And we'll continue doing research so we can tell people this is what works and measure it. So, because I think that's how people make sense of what we do. And even our research is done by people with learning disabilities. I don't know if I've answered the question. You have to guide me.
We have heard that people with the learning disabilities want to and should have a voice. How can we make sure this happens? What should commissioners be doing to make sure it really is nothing about us without us? And how are we going that at the foundation?
Yeah, as I said, the foundation is led by a board, which is made up of people with learning disabilities. And it's them that guide us and people with autism on the board as well. And they guide us and tell us what they want to see us do next. As I said, Sonia, the work you did with the hate crime group, thinking about what we do next and deciding that we do what works, and then deciding we do training. That's again something that you as a group looked at the evidence, looked at what we found, and made the decision based on information. Because one of the things we also do is we do training for people with learning disabilities. We do training in leadership. It's important for people with learning disabilities to be able to know what they are asked to do and what they are asked to be involved in. They need to understand representation. They need to understand how they support leadership and how they make sure that they are not led, but they are leading. I think that's so important. I think in terms of how we are doing, we need to truly listen. It's not about, I think the message from this show is that enough listening. We've heard people with learning disabilities over the years. And as Sonia said, I am quite old. I've been listening to it since the 80s. And everybody has been saying the same thing. I want an ordinary life. I want a job. I want a girlfriend. I want a lover. I want to be able to go out on holidays. I want a home of my own. And all these things they've been saying over and over again. I want good support. I want to make choices of my own. I want to eat what I want, a good, okay, I'm not saying uninformed choices, but it's these sort of things that are so important that we need to be listening to what people are saying and hearing it. I think Steve is the man that said hearing, not just listening, but hearing and acting. And if there's one message from this show is take action. We want to take action. And our pledge is that we will make sure, like Ishmael said, we are a piece of that jigsaw puzzle that makes change happen. And we will make sure that, as Steve said, is supporting people to be heard. But commissioners need to now act. We need to act now. Enough people still stuck in long stay institutions. Enough people not getting a jobs because employment projects are funded wrongly. For example, this is my bugbear. Why fund a cafe to run if the intention isn't to get someone a job? Because what the intention of a cafe is, or an employment cafe would be, is to get a throughput, getting students with a learning disability to go through one end and out of the other without a job. Don't pay them until they find someone, the person that comes the other end, they get a job. Once they've got a job, then you get paid. I want to see that sort of thinking. I'm being tough, I'm being a bit draconian, but I am heading for retirement, so I'm allowed. It's making sure that commissioners are leading by example as well. And they are saying very clearly, we want people to get the outcomes they want. It's not good enough having isolated institutional support. And it's not just good enough to be funding things over and over again if we don't know it's working well. Biggest action, let's make change life. Let's make change now. Let's not wait anymore. We need to make change now. Now's the time. We can't wait anymore. I think I'll stop there.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you.
Any questions from the audience?
Yeah, I believe we have a live question. So if you have a live question, please unmute yourself and then we can come over to you. There you go. Any live questions? Someone had their hand up. Yep, yeah, we can come over to you. I can see your hand up. You just need to unmute yourself so you can ask it.
Sorry, Lauren, you need to unmute yourself if you want to ask a question.
Okay. I
Hi,
was
Lauren.
going to say this, like learning disability, something like that, or like autism, something like that. Maybe Facebook and Twitter, and sharing everything.
Okay. I think it's important, absolutely, for people to be supported to access anything they want. And Twitter is a good way of communicating with people. So is that what your question was, Lauren?
It is a question, yes. I am proud of myself, like a Sunderland People First, with Sharon Bell and myself and Ian and Matty and Gavin and Sam.
Yeah.
I think it's a brilliant ideas, like sharing everything, like a whole people in a whole group, and share something like that, or after this meeting.
That would be fantastic. Thank you, Lauren. And we are also very proud of Sunderland People First. Thank you.
Steve, we'll come over to you, and then we've got a comment from Ismail.
Cool. I'd just like to congratulate Sonia and Neil for such a brilliant organisation today. Christine, I absolutely agree with everything you said, but especially your comments, which I would never say aloud, but now perhaps I will because of you, about employment for people with learning disabilities in the cafes. So the people go to cafes on placement, etc., as a volunteer, but hopefully this should lead to proper employment, like paid employment. So yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you, Steve. I agree with everything you said.
Cool.
Thanks, Steve. And just to say, Anne has done tons of hard work as well. So massive round of applause to Anne as well as Sonia. So well done, Anne. Ismail, over to you for your comment.
Yep, I'll say like well done for everybody who's put in input of everything that was said today. I would like to sort of say that that all services, including commissioners, that there should be consistencies, and also put in discrimination, stopping discrimination in a way away from everybody, especially people with disabilities, learning disabilities, and anyone else, because discrimination has been a long time there, and this is always, there's always a stop that someone can't do this, can't do that. We don't want to hear what people can't do. We want to know what people can do. How can they make them happy? How they can make their real lives? So for me, getting a job is not only about my working in main cap or earning a salary. There's a lot more than that. I've actually gained confidence, talking to people, sharing my ideas, sharing part of my work stuff, what I can, and also showing what I can do, not actually showing what things I can't do. I know people might have in life, they have like a balance, the things that are their strengths and weaknesses, but we like to show more about our strengths, not weakness. So I would like to see like lots of people getting opportunities of people with learning disabilities and disabilities having opportunity to gain a job in those areas where people, for example, I'll give an example. So for example, like NHS, yeah, or a government department. If they employ people with learning disabilities or disabilities, that can raise a more awareness about how can you deal with people with disability patients or learning disability patients, how to put in accessible information, or having a hospital passport, for example. So people like with hospital passport, that if the doctor changes all the time, then a hospital passport is a good thing to have to save time and also save the patient's time to explain over and over again what is the problem is of their health or disability. So I would like to see a lot more people learn disabilities or disabilities into paid jobs, making their real lives more open and more happier, and that can make a lot of difference for the whole community, not only about their lives, but everybody else, because there's lots of holes that is not filled up enough, and we need to fill those holes properly with proper enjoyable and more inclusive community. Yeah.
Thank you, Ismail. Thank you. Lots of comments backing you up and agreeing with you in the chat box there. Gavin, we'll have a quick question from you, and then we'll have to go because we are running over slightly.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's no, I can't say this, but well done everybody who's contributed today. Well done everybody who's contributed.
Sonia,
Yeah.
I just noticed that. Sonia, we're going to hand over to you to close. Thank you, everyone.
Should we do a couple of quick questions quick? Not all of them, so I'll do about 3 quick questions. Is that all right, Christina?
Yeah, as long as we don't forget to ask people to put in the chat box what a good life is for them. So maybe we could ask them to do that while they listen to my responses. Could you put in the chat box, please, what good looks like for you? What is a good life for you as a person? And that would be amazing, because that would help with our work in the future with Anne. I hope I got the question right, Anne. Go for it, Sonia.
Your quick 5 questions. One thing that you like to do in your free time?
Oh dear, I like to read. I do pottery. I like to do pottery, and I like to draw. I should really like to walk more.
What is the last TV series or film that you watched?
Oh dear, the last TV series I watched was the if I can remember it. MasterChef. I watched MasterChef and watched the winner. I did watch something else, but I can't remember the name.
The last question, a genie tells you that he will fulfill one simple wish to do something you have always dreamed of. There's just one catch. If he grant you a wish, you have to change your name from then on, be known as Moonchild, Star Warrior. Do you accept the wish, or if so, what would it be?
Yeah, I'll accept the wish. A more equal world with no wars and no inequalities. It's like yeah, it's like I'm being it's like I'm winning an award as a beauty queen, isn't it? Equal, what's the word they use? Peace on earth. And yeah, I would want a wish, and that would be to have an equal world with no wars.
Ladies, gentlemen.
Okay.
Christina Burke.
Thank you. Thank you, Sonia. You were amazing. Thank you, Sonia.
Right. That's the end of the show today. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll see you at the next one show.
Is Peter able to play us out at all? Thanks, Sonia.
Yeah, Peter will play us out. So Peter, it's over to you.
You're just on mute there, Peter.
I'll just get myself set up.
I should say that Peter is a musician, a photographer, a filmmaker, an actor, and a great leader. But he has all these creative talents, and you should see his photography. It's just unbelievable.
Okay. Yeah, and I did this one, my own composition.
Thank you very, very much, Peter, for finishing us off. We will send out this recording to everyone who registered. Please share it with anyone you feel who might be interested. Help us to get the conversation going beyond the event just itself today. Huge congratulations to everyone involved. We will be in touch when the next instalment of the Other One show is announced. See you soon.